Sony was hyped on selling this as a conspiracy movie, and I kept arguing this is really a fear of change movie, because that's what's going on. And so we began to organize the movie to backtrack a little bit and say, well, how can we tell this very complicated story that's really about everybody's fear of change? And so we made everybody a suspect. And I put them in a giant FileMaker program and went through tons and tons of different facts, and we began to edit together all of our protest scenes where the last cars got hauled off. And you know, it's unfortunate for General Motors in a way, because General Motors became the target of the film because, in a way, they had made the perfect first electric car, but Toyota and Honda and Nissan and everybody was secretly destroying their cars too, and we tried to make that clear in the film, but that's the way it all turned out. And it's not just the car maker's fault, and that's one of the points the film made. So we went through all the different suspects, and the big thing for consumers is nobody wants to be the first person on the block to have a failure of a car. Nobody wants to run out of electricity on the way to Las Vegas, is a favorite example here. Nobody wants to have a car that isn't exactly like the last car they had. And of course, the point is that all electric cars don't have to be the same. I can't think the Project Better Place reminded me of that the Henry Ford quote about, if you ask consumers what they wanted at the turn of the century, they would say they wanted a faster horse. They didn't want that, they wanted a car. So the paradigm of an electric car does not necessarily have to exactly equal the gas-powered car with all of its advantages and disadvantages. So consumers were real reluctant. And of course, batteries, this is the #1 culprit that the car makers blamed, and certainly they weren't nearly as energy dense as they are today. So that's come along a certain way. But I would argue that even in 1996, you could have a very effective highway range electric car, because I drove one for 5 years and it was just fine. Oil companies, everybody's favorite villain. And in California, what happened is they argued with the state about putting in public infrastructure. I think the oil companies have really backed down a lot of this stuff, but they did make the journey very difficult when they started backing hydrogen in the sort of the big game changer of hydrogen. And there's our oil company guy, car companies, we interviewed them. And the federal government got involved, and they sued California to say you can't have electric cars because they didn't have good leadership in Washington, and California Resources Board, and finally the hydrogen fuel cell. The hydrogen fuel cell is, of course, one of the toughest topics for us in the electric car community. It made a lot of us hydrogen fuel cell haters for a while, and this sort of speaks to how emotion plays in changing. But ultimately, hydrogen fuel cell cars are, of course, electric cars. The problem is what's the fastest car you can get to market and at what cost? And in California, and I would argue throughout the world, we lost a lot of time chasing hydrogen. Maybe back, probably will as technology improves, but not for now. And our governor was a big hydrogen proponent because General Motors helped him link the Hummer, which he had proposed, to an environmental message. So there was those are all our cast of characters, and that was how the film came out, as a film noir idea. And we went to Sundance and we did festivals around the world, and it was very great for my ego for a little while. And the Sony couldn't figure out how to market it because they couldn't market the film on television because so much of television advertising is controlled by auto company dollars, and nobody really wanted to chase away their advertising revenue, which had happened when the press had over-reported the flip-overs of SUVs. So we had to really advertise the film in print and posters and The Daily Show and Colbert Report and kind of unconventional ways of getting the movie out there. And I knew the film was probably an excellent film on some level when my dad called me after we got reviewed in The Economist. You know, we edited the film so that my dad would like the movie, and my dad's what they call in California a McCloskey Republican. He's a conservative guy, and I knew that if we couldn't make the case to my dad about electric cars, then we hadn't succeeded as a film. And The Economist picked it up, and they liked the film. And the irony of this journey for me a little bit is that, as you may have heard General Motors has been doing a big press play on their Chevrolet Volt. And they've decided that I'm an important part of their press message to get my endorsement of their new car. And we went out yesterday, or was it 2 days ago, I can't remember, with jet lag, and we went for the concept reveal of their new production body for the Volt. And it's a beautiful looking car. But I would sit there in these breakfasts with the GM briefing team, and these are the same people that were just, completely livid with us 4 years ago. And I kept making the point to the press that the future is far too important for us to hold grudge matches with anybody right now. We have to get this stuff done, and if that means crossing paths we didn't used to, that's what we'll have to do.